Hi, welcome to your Optavia LifeBook audio channel. I'm so glad that you're here. Today we have the privilege of diving into element 16, all about addictive food. We'll be starting on part 2 on page 320 today. My name is Christy Baker and I'm an independent certified Optavia health coach, and it's so nice to have you come join me today. Thank you for stopping by the channel. I hope you'll have gone back and listened to the previous recordings and get caught up, and we'll be week by week trekking through the book until we reach the end. So thank you so much for coming along on this journey with me. Before we get started, if you could take just a quick moment to like and subscribe to the channel, that way you know when the next video is coming out. Well, let's go ahead and get started. In our last video, we talked about how important it was to not reintroduce ultra-refined sugar and flour back into our diet, because having been on the 5-in-1 or the 4-in-2 programs, we've largely taken those items out of our normal day-to-day diet. So now, going into transition and into our maintenance phase, our optimal health, we don't want to reintroduce those. And here's why. The first one is because of insatiable hunger. Leptin is the hunger suppressant hormone released by your fat cells that tell your brain when you're not hungry anymore. Go get busy and build a hut. Find a mate. Do something to improve your survival. We went over its role in detail in parts 2.8 in Dr. A's Habits of Health, when we talked about your new body weight set point during transition. Researchers have found that as insulin rises in response to eating sugar and flour and refined foods, it blocks leptin, and it's no longer capable of suppressing hunger. In studies, mice were fed high glycemic foods, and as insulin rose in their blood, the mice began to eat continuously and stopped moving. Was it because they had no willpower? Or because they were weak? No, it was because the refined foods flipped the metabolic switch, and this explains why, before starting this journey, you may have found yourself on the couch eating a whole tub of ice cream at 10 p.m. So if you experience the urge, stop, challenge, and choose. And if you still feel like you need something sweet, satisfy it with a fueling that does not flip on that switch. You've got this. It's biology, not psychology. And although your habits of health will automate a healthy response over time. Another important reason to avoid refined sugar and flour is because of cravings and addiction. The second problem with refined sugar and flour is that they light up the brain just like cocaine and heroin. As we discussed in part 2.5 of Dr. A's Habits of Health, when subjects are placed on MRI machines designed to show areas of the brain that are activated after consuming sugar or refined flour, the subject's pleasure and reward center lights up like a fireworks display. The hyperactive area known as the nucleus accumbens releases large amounts of dopamine, which creates a pleasurable feeling and leads to the desire for more. This is why you may go out on a cold, snowy night to get your favorite ice cream, or eat a whole pizza, or a whole bag of potato chips. And just like the continual use of a drug, if you continue to eat sugary and refined processed foods, the brain adapts rapidly and starts to thin out the dopamine receptors, because it senses that too much dopamine was released. As a result, the receptors down-regulate, so now you lack the ability to feel the same level of pleasure unless you eat larger amounts to stimulate enough dopamine release. In people who are more susceptible, it can create a state of lifelessness, down, or even depressed feelings, with a lack of energy between the sugar rushes. I may be describing how you felt before you started this journey, or maybe not. It depends on how susceptible you are to the addictive powers of sugar and refined flours. Just like some people have a varying degree of addictive potential to alcohol, the same is true with refined sugar and flour. Isn't that interesting? Susceptibility to refined sugar and flour. Because refined, ultra-processed food lights up the pleasure centers of our brain, there is a degree of risk to all of us in this obsogenic world of processed foods. But it's clear that some of us are at a much higher risk than others of being drawn into the dark web of sugar and refined flour addiction. In one study, rats were exposed to a lever that they could push before a highly sugary food was released into a trough. The highly susceptible group, 1/3 of them, these rats loved the lever and would continuously hit it even before the food was released. The moderately susceptible group, 1/3, these rats would come to the lever sometimes, and sometimes they would not. And the low susceptible group, these rats would only come when the food showed up. Why does the lever help us understand the patterns of addiction? The highly susceptible rats fell in love with the lever, which is a strong cue that predicts reward. The cue actually becomes the reward and sets up a craving that is a powerful determinant of behavior. How does this translate into our own lives? Suddenly, a TV commercial stimulates you at a subconscious level to desire a dessert to the point that you will drive through a snowstorm to get it. Since our world is saturated with such cues, it's important that you are aware of your level of risk so that you can become much more vigilant. Let's do a quick test to see which category you fall into in terms of addiction to sugar and refined flour. Just like the rats, humans also stratify into one of these 3 general groups. All right, I'm going to read to you this quiz, and you can find it also on page 322. And I would highly encourage you to go back and take that quiz for yourself and share your results with your coach. Number 1, I find it difficult to control how much I eat. And the multiple choice answers are rarely, occasionally, or daily. Number 2, I crash in the afternoon and have trouble waking up in the morning. Rarely, occasionally, or daily. Number 3, I have cravings for specific foods. Rarely, occasionally, or daily. Number 4, I suffer from moodiness, headaches, or fogginess. Rarely, occasionally, or daily. When I only eat a moderate amount of food, I am not satisfied. Rarely, occasionally, or daily. Number 6, I feel guilty after eating. Rarely, occasionally, or daily. Number 7, I spend a considerable amount of time thinking about food. Rarely, occasionally, or daily. Number 8, I eat even if I'm not hungry because I crave food. Rarely, occasionally, or daily. Number 9, I eat large amounts of food and feel powerless to stop. Rarely, occasionally, or daily. And the last one, number 10, I crave carbohydrates like pasta, bread, white rice, or desserts. Rarely, occasionally, or daily. I'm going to teach you how to do your score. For low susceptibility, you would have less than 6 rarelys. For moderate to susceptibility, you would have less than 6 occasionallys. In high susceptibility, you would have more than 6 dailies. I think I said that. It could have been. I think that's right. All right. So we're going to go ahead and stop there today. Go back in your book and do that quiz for yourself so you can really do a self-awareness test and understand where you fall on that line of greatly susceptible or low susceptibility. And that will really help bring some awareness to your decisions in the future. Thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll be back on our next video to finish up element 16.